Welcome to the Goal Podcast, news and commentary from Gun Owners Action League, your leading voice for the Massachusetts gun owner.
I'm Garrett. Across the table from Jeff, it's October now. All of a sudden. I mean, like yesterday it was May, but here we are. What's going on?
Well, the summer flew on by.
Yeah, it did.
But deer season has officially gotten underway. John and I were out yesterday morning.
Yeah. You
Early
guys went
yesterday
out for
morning.
Opening day. How'd it go?
Proceeded to immediately get busted walking into my blind by a buck. I was about 100 feet from getting in, and I just hear like that snort.
It's like, hey, man.
He caught me.
What are you doing in here?
I interrupted his breakfast. So I knew I was like, all right, my morning's probably shot, but.
Yeah, because he bailed out right afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
Naturally.
I heard him
like,
take.
See ya.
But then, hey, some turkeys were walking around and milling about in front of the blind. So I texted John. I said, should I shoot one?
Well, whack him.
And he goes, sure, why not? So
there you go. You got your fall tom.
Yeah. Found one that they lasered him. I found one that happened to be right at 20 yards, which is what my top pin set for. Put the pin on him and
pow.
Done.
Dirt nap. Yeah, there you go. So now you got turkey. Right on. Congratulations. Way to open the season. I say this every year. Maybe I'll get out for turkey this year. I hope so. If we can arrange for a Saturday, I'll definitely get out.
Got to wait till the shotgun part of the season. Not unless you want to get the bow out and start practicing heavily.
Yeah, heavily.
It's a small target.
The bow's pretty dusty right now. I got to get it taken care of and updated and restrung and all that stuff. But I'm going to do it. Just like I always say, I'm going to do it. What else is going on?
The Lucky 20 raffle's ongoing.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's still going on. We mentioned it last time.
Get your tickets at goal.org. The tickets are 1 for $10, 3 for $20, 10 for $50, or 25 for $100. So the more you buy, the cheaper they are, right?
Yep, absolutely.
That's gun math, right?
I tell my wife that all the time.
Buy once, cry once. The draw is December 19th, 2024 at the Goal office. Grab the tickets now.
Yep.
While you still can.
All proceeds obviously going to fight the, going to support the cause. Jim, who will be joining us in just a few minutes, is certainly going to talk about all this stuff, but we've got some major fights going on, and major fights, unfortunately, require major bankrolls. So we're going to have to pay for litigation and so forth. And this is one good way to start paying that down, and people get really cool guns out of it. So go to goal.org, get your tickets.
Unfortunately, we do not get to steal from the state coffers of all the taxpayers' money.
That's right. We don't
to file our personal, personal wishes.
Right. We don't get to drain the taxpayer, to fight the battles.
So we are being joined by Jim Wallace, Executive Director of Gun Owners Action League, in a few minutes. Goal has sent out a mailer as of a couple weeks ago containing some critical information. So we started to talk about the hunting season. Regarding hunting under the Chapter 135 laws that were immedially put into effect upon the emergency preamble,
which we will
Healey,
also talk
which we're going to be covering with Jim.
Yeah, but it's important to realize that this mailing, if you didn't get the mailing, you can find the substance of it at goal.org. This stuff is in effect right now.
Yes.
It was in effect last week. So when she dropped this load on all of us here in Massachusetts, she screwed over a bunch of people immediately who are hunters, and this is real stuff. So the first thing about the Goal mailing: junior hunters and FID holders of any age may not possess any type of semi-automatic in the field. That's new.
Yeah, that's your bird hunting shotguns. If you run a semi-auto for shotgun for deer season.
Yeah.
You need an LTC to have those now.
Yeah.
Effective as of.
So junior hunters, your 15-year-old who used to be able to take grandpa's shotgun out. Guess what? That's a felony now, because for some reason that's keeping us safe. Also, anybody using a muzzleloader has to possess an FID or LTC in order to purchase and possess ammunition components. This is a subtle change from the way it was before. Muzzleloader that can use modern ammunition, whether or not it actually does, but can use modern ammunition components, i.e., your 209 shotgun primers.
Yep, and debatable on projectiles,
right?
Powder, whether you're
bullets, etc. Yeah. You need an FID or an LTC for those. You didn't used to. And also, muzzleloader as a firearm is going to have to be registered with the state.
Yep. So your modern muzzleloaders that have sort of internal mechanisms of a modern firearm, and I say modern as in like the trigger engages a sear that releases a hammer to hit a modern primer. Under the new guidance or under the new law, those are considered receivers. Mm-hmm. And
they're going to have to be serialized and registered. Subject
to registry.
Yeah, and this encompasses all of your modern inline muzzleloaders that use these. You can make your argument for 19th century percussion cap guns and so forth, but this is everything that works off of modern principles, basically.
Again, I think we've kind of hinted at it and said it plenty of times, but the law is intentionally vague.
Yeah.
So,
and then last but not least, non-resident stuff. Here we go. Non-residents must register their firearms with the state. Non-residents are banned from possessing semi-automatic guns for hunting.
On an FID or an LTC?
I'm pretty sure that was a blanket statement. Possession, that the new law bans the possession of semi-automatic firearms, including rifles and shotguns for non-resident hunters, period.
Because how the hell can I carry a semi-auto pistol on an LTC on my way to go hunting, then lock it up in the truck and not be able to carry a semi-auto shotgun into the field?
Welcome to Massachusetts. I don't know. And it also bans, pretty much completely bans all non-residents under 18 from hunting in Massachusetts.
It's essentially just becoming impossible to
hunt here as a non-resident, especially.
To hunt as a non-resident, even to hunt as a resident, is starting to get.
Yeah.
It's down to the point where essentially, if you want to hunt with a firearm, you're going to have to make some major adjustments to what you've done previously.
Yeah. Yep. So there's that. So Jim's going to join us in just a second. I'm sure we'll have more to talk about with him, especially on this, but also on the referendum, the lawsuits and the emergency preamble, of course. So without further ado, let's get to Jim. All right. So joining us right now, Jim Wallace, Executive Director, Gun Owners Action League, the boss man. How's it going?
Sponsored by Four Roses Bourbon.
Appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight. It's good to know that you haven't gone completely insane quite yet. We were just actually talking about the mailing that Goal sent out a few weeks ago regarding the hunting stuff. We went through the details, for the purposes of anybody listening, but give us, if you don't mind, just like real shortly, give us a background of that mailing. What was the impetus there?
Well, we know that this thing didn't leave anybody out. This was a flat-out attack on all parts of the Second Amendment community, including hunters and reenactors and you name it. So I had contacted the commissioner of Fish and Game, and I've known him for, I can't even tell you how long. And I said, hey, are you going to do some kind of direct contact with hunters, especially non-residents, because they're walking into a you-know-what storm. They have no clue what's going on. If they're not a member of Goal, and sometimes even if they are, they don't quite understand. And he said, well, we're waiting for the environmental police to come up with a consensus on the law, and then we'll post something on the internet. And I'm like,
that's not going to work.
That is not going to cut it. That is not going to cut it. So,
Jesus.
Luckily, the names and addresses of hunting license possessors, buyers, whatever, is public information. So I did a quick FOIA, Freedom of Information Act request. Mm-hmm. I got I think it was their 2023 list. And basically, we ended up doing a 60,000 piece mailing to resident hunters and should be going out soon to about 6,600 non-residents in the border states. We didn't do the whole country. We just did the border states to non-residents.
Yeah.
And apparently we caused quite a firestorm because non-residents specifically are calling the Fish and Wildlife demanding a refund on their hunting license for this year.
Good.
Because they won't be able to come and hunt. And of course, the government's telling them, well, there's no process for refunding these things. Yeah, so of course, not much we can do.
Actually, you pass a law making it illegal for me to come there. That's, what the hell?
That's right.
What the hell?
They have no problem taking your money. It's giving it back.
Right.
So,
that's the problem. So I have my letter here that I got. And I did, point out kudos for Goal, because you didn't just send it to Goal members, you sent it to everybody at Goal's cost. And it was, a way for outreach and getting the word out to everybody. It's not just about membership, folks. It's about, making sure that nobody gets screwed to the extent possible. So I got my letter. That was cool. Did you get one of these?
Yay! Look at that. Jeff's one of those boundary staters or whatever you want to call it.
Those borderland dwellers.
The thing that becomes interesting for the non-resident hunter is that you are now subject to all of these crazy Massachusetts firearms laws, including registrations.
Mm-hmm.
So if you plan on coming into, even if you have that FID, that LTC, or whatever the requisite licensing is, if you have that already,
you're still supposed to have everything registered.
You're supposed to be registering your firearms with the state of Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Just to come hunt.
And how are they supposed to know that?
Exactly.
Other than the letter we're going to send out to them, should be heading out any day now. But how are they supposed to know that? How are they supposed to know, especially like coastal duck hunters, that if you're a non-resident adult hunter, you can't use the semi-automatic anything?
And after doing it for 50 years running, how are you supposed to know that suddenly changed?
Nope. And if you're under 18, you're banned. Period.
Completely. What the hell is that about? So
you can't. If you're a non-resident under 18, you can't hunt here.
That's disgusting.
Well, I'll tell you, Garrett and Jeff, those New Hampshire 15-year-old pheasant hunters have been a scourge in the city of Boston forever. And damn it, we're doing something about it.
They're the real problem. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. It's not the gang members and, the Haitians or whoever. It's those 15-year-old pheasant hunters. So,
that's right. And all this after Maura Healey stood up there and did her little song and dance for the news cameras about how great hunters are.
Yeah.
Last week?
Yep.
Yeah, I have a feeling she's not as big a fan as she made it out to be.
Yeah.
But Jim, some people might ask, they're not hunting with semi-automatic shotguns. Maybe they're just coming in with a muzzleloader for the very end of deer season, or they just hunt with, something that's considered a primitive arm. How has the law changed for them? And what are the new guidelines for those primitive firearms that don't even have to be registered federally?
Stay home. Yeah. that's the answer. Stay home.
Yeah.
There's a lot with the muzzleloader / black powder, because they have done a couple of things. First of all, and it's kind of hard to explain. There's some ether around this, but any muzzleloader that would take a modern component is now considered technically a modern firearm, which would have to be registered, and you have to have a license for it.
So this includes all of your inline, like 209 shotgun primers and all of that stuff.
Yep. Yeah. Now, the other thing that's interesting too is how far they would take that, because some muzzleloader hunters, especially the inlines, would use, for instance, a 45 caliber copper jacket bullet instead of a round ball or something, or a maxi ball or something like that.
Sure.
So how far are they going to take that? The other problem now is that after 1998, which was the first draft of ridiculousness, a lot of people lost their ability to have a license in Mass, a gun license, or even an FID card. So there was an exemption in the law that, listen, you could own a primitive arm, a truly primitive arm, and the ammunition to go through it. There was a specific exemption for the ammunition.
Yeah.
And that's gone. And that's one of the problems that we have trying to explain it to people, because, Jim, I've read this law. There's nothing in there that says that. Okay, it's not what's in the new law. It's what's not in the new law.
Right. The exemption is no longer there.
Right.
Yeah.
In their argument, some of the argument we get back from the legislature is, well, the feds don't consider this a gun, so the ammunition is fine.
That's not
I'm not going to stake my...
Yeah.
No. So...
What's that you say, Jeff? Never count on the government being cool.
Yeah,
that's what I tell students. Don't bet your freedom on the government being chill about it.
Yeah.
No.
But that's an interesting point you bring up, Jim, about modern projectile components, because nobody that I know, and
all the belted
you made a salient
all
point.
That stuff. Nobody shoots round balls anymore.
Yeah, I don't know anybody casting their own lead round ball for a smoothbore musket. So
they're not melting down their son's little lead toys and creating round balls.
Soldiers,
no.
yeah.
So even if you were shooting a flintlock with true black powder that you had to pour in by hand, if you seed a modern projectile on top of that,
that's modern ammunition, right?
Would that not be considered modern ammunition?
You know what the standard answer is? Hell if I know.
Yeah.
So,
well,
yeah. So, I mean, even the letter that we just talked about, I was at the Topsfield Fair. We'll be there all week. And right next to us, the environmental police are set up, and they're all great guys. But I feel bad for them because they have no clue what they're supposed to enforce or how to enforce it. And I had two separate EPOs actually pull our hunting letter out of their pocket and say, we got unofficial guidance, but not from our leadership. And what Fish and Wildlife, they have now posted on their website some so-called clarifications, and they're wrong. They're just flat out wrong.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, and we tried for months to talk to Fish and Wildlife, and they just wouldn't even return our calls.
Nobody.
So,
they don't.
But their inside law council, came up with this, and I'm like, well, fire them and take away their bar, whatever they call it, and just go away. License to practice law, and tell them to go practice medicine instead. So
now, Jim,
this
all comes from the part of the reason why this has become such an immediate problem is Maura Healey signing the emergency preamble to put the law into effect immediately, not waiting anymore. Now, we were originally told that this had been an ongoing project for 2 years. This was so well legally researched. It was, I believe Michael Day put it as Bruin proof.
Yeah, it will survive any constitutional challenge.
And that they had the full support of law enforcement to move forward on this bill.
Lies.
And it had been vetted with the agencies.
Correct.
Cindy Creed stood on the Senate floor and said, "No, we've vetted this with the state agencies. They're behind it and they're ready to go." Not so much.
That's a lie.
Well, we've gotten contradicting information. No surprise there. Part of the rationale for the emergency preamble, Maura Healey says, well, they're finally now getting to dig their teeth into the bill, and it's urgent, it's necessary.
Oh, that's...
On one hand, you're being told that this was arguably the most well-researched and put forward legislation for firearms in the state of Massachusetts ever. Maura Healey is saying that they're finally just now reading into this bill to see what it actually does. Which do you think is the more true of the two?
She didn't read this thing. She has no idea what's in it.
No, they were handed some kind of bold, what
summary
written by who knows who.
Yeah, it's ghost guns and live fire. Yeah,
because the media is still parroting it.
Yeah,
it's nothing but ghost guns and live fire. Well, yeah, but it's whatever.
Yeah, that's
it's to the point where the media is a problem.
So
right. No, it's not even close.
So the nuts and bolts. So the law was signed by the governor back in July, on July 23rd, without an emergency preamble. 2 months go by, the coalition's doing their thing, and then all of a sudden, right about the same time that the coalition's getting ready to announce that they have enough signatures, the governor suddenly says, oh, well, this thing is such an emergency, we need an emergency preamble to make the law go into effect immediately. So she has the power to do that under the state constitution in cases where it's an emergency. Now, she was asked, and I found this quote on October the 1st, she was asked by reporters why she waited for 2 months before she would sign before she decided to sign the emergency preamble. And she said, quote, "This was just when we were able to process it and look through it and review the legislation," just like Jeff was talking about. So my natural question is, if you're just now looking at it, why the hell did you sign it back in July? But maybe that's too much to ask.
Well, it's kind of, I guess, ironic. The original signing it into law in July was literally almost to the day 8 years after she pulled her garbage in 2016.
Almost exactly.
Almost to the day.
Yep.
So, but, it's, hey, you can't say she didn't learn from the last one because she doesn't want to learn and she doesn't care. And if you remember, the reason she did the 2016 one, she held a press conference, woke up, didn't warn anybody, held a press conference, changed the law, and then flew to Washington to be standing next to Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
So here we have her again signing a bill, and now she's hanging around who's running for president and hoping it's like, so basically we are, I don't know, the ugly stepchild that she beats on to get attention from the nationals. Yeah. In hope that she's going to get a job in Washington.
It feels very much like she wants to be the next AG or something like that. It feels very much like she's angling for a federal job. But so be that as it may, so roll the clock back just a little bit, a week or two, about 2 weeks before she signed the emergency preamble, the state legislature suddenly decided that they had an agreement on this midterm spending bill, which was, I don't know, 9,000 words or something like that, and buried way, way down in the depths of this budget bill. There was one segment that said, "Oh, by the way, all the training requirements for Chapter 135, we're going to set those off by 18 months." Nobody said anything. There was no announcement. There was no discussion on it. It was just part of that budget bill, and it got signed without any sort of fanfare whatsoever. Oh, by the way, this totally constitutionally challenge-proof law, we just had to, we had to fix that part of it immediately.
That is a hell of an emergency that can be delayed for 18 months.
Yeah. So the government basically gave themselves an extra 18 months to get their house in order, but shortly thereafter, she signs the emergency preamble, dumping the rest of it on us.
Yep. So far, we have 2 guidance letters suspending certain parts of the law. The first one was the training, and the second one was about the retailer long gun roster. So far we have 2 guidance letters, and then really a third, if you count that, from the state police about, what should happen about the training and licensing and so forth. And, it's the other part of that is local law enforcement going to buy in on this? Because it's only a guidance letter. The guidance letter doesn't protect you in court. So, if you get a gung-ho law enforcement something and they arrest you and charge you, you may eventually get out from underneath of it, but it ain't going to cost you $5. I'll tell you that much right now. Yeah. And I told one of the attorneys for the state, I don't want to see any more guidance letters. No more guidance. Yeah. Tell us exactly what we can and can't do. No more guidance.
Well, if the law was told, I'm sorry to butt in on you, Jim. No. But if the law was so clear and has been vetted by so many people and everybody signed off on it and everybody bought into it, there shouldn't be any need for guidance. The law should be clear enough on its own that it doesn't need 3 or 4 amendments before it goes into effect. It doesn't need to have an emergency preamble to put it in effect with the caveat of we're not going to enforce it for 18 months. And now you're getting all these different guidance letters from different agencies. They don't know. And they're pulling out the letter from Gun Owners Action League saying this is the best information that we can find.
They are the state agencies, and I don't fault the EPOs or anything like that. This is higher up than the officers, right? So this is, but the state agencies are basically just making shit up as they go along. I mean, some of the stuff that's in this guidance letter, correct me if I'm wrong, please, but is in direct contravention to the language of the actual bill.
Yeah, it's insane, especially the licensing, the training piece, because now they're saying, okay, use the training you have in place now, but when we get this all figured out, then you're going to have to come back and take more training.
Yeah, no. That's not in the law.
That's creating a whole new piece of law unto itself.
That's right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that's like completely invented out of whole cloth.
And in a scary turn, the way the LTCs have been historically managed is that if you are not statutorily qualified to have the license becomes invalid immediately. Not eventually when you go to renew. So if, like, say, for example, you get a 209A restraining order, you move out of state, the day your address changes, your license becomes invalid. So when that 18 months comes up, people will not have the requisite training to be statutorily qualified for the license. So do we think that maybe puts people at risk at 18 months to have their license potentially pulled?
Well, I think that every single person in the two-way community is at risk, period. We are literally walking felons in waiting because you cannot comply with this thing. You can't. Even if you want to, you can't. So it's one of those things where in walking into the lawsuit discussion, for a year and a half, we warned people, listen, if we don't stop this thing, all of those folks that said, oh, just stop all this ridiculousness and go to court.
Just file.
All right.
Yeah. Right.
Well, we're there, and we're not seeing the support financially to do it. I mean, there are a lot of people, don't get me wrong, a lot of people are stepping up. Well, I don't see that from these keyboard commandos that have been hammering us to go to court. And the other thing is they're demanding that, well, Cole isn't doing their job because there should be an emergency injunction. Emergency injunctions are incredibly rare.
Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah. You literally have to be sitting on, death row or something for a court to throw an emergency injunction.
That's not a thing.
It does happen.
That's not a thing.
Well, what do they think you're going to do?
Happen.
Call the governor?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I wouldn't wait for that phone call. It does happen, but they're incredibly rare. But everybody thinks, oh, you just walk into a federal court, file some papers, and it's over. Not even close.
It doesn't even work that way in the movies,
We have spent, so we've got one federal case already filed. That was about the training and the licensing. Yep. The irony is now that the Attorney General has contacted our attorneys and said, well, are you guys going to pull that because the law has been suspended? And our attorneys are like, are you going to change your mind tomorrow? Right. And are you going to actually issue licenses? Because we've got a lot of people lining up to be plaintiffs that are being told, no, you can't get one. So I haven't gotten the official word. They were thinking about pulling their training one so they could put resources somewhere else. I think that's a smart move. We will continue with ours because we don't know what they're going to do tomorrow. But I think it's interesting that the Attorney General wanted us to pull it, and our attorneys just said no. We have another case in the works. It's in regard to retailers, but not really on the commercial end. Yeah, it's focusing mainly on the long gun roster that they just suspended. And don't you find it funny that every time we announce something, they suspend something?
Isn't that weird?
So it's like playing whack-a-mole with a law book or something.
Yeah, but this law is bulletproof. It'll survive any challenge.
Yeah. So that one should be finalized and filed, we hope, within the week.
Excellent.
And then I just got word from the NRA attorneys that, well, they sent me what they call an engagement letter, which means, we're going to be part of that lawsuit as well. And if they're sending me an engagement letter, that means they're almost ready to file this sucker. And that one's going to be about the new assault weapon language in the under 21 stuff, I believe. And then we're still working to try to get somebody to handle the non-resident stuff. So, when we warned people for over a year about what this would take, I tell people, because, at the Topsfield Fair is a great opportunity to talk to a ton of people. And I tell them, listen, we have already spent $150,000 on legal fees, and we haven't had a case heard yet. We have a case filed, but this isn't just, hire a divorce lawyer and file a suit. There's a lot of work that goes into this because this stuff is brand new. Nobody's dealt with anything.
Yeah, we're
history.
We're maybe 30 days into a potentially 5 to 10 year battle, and we're 6 figures into investing into
the people online kill me. You watch arguments going back and forth, right? People are like, well, okay, fine. When Gold finally files a lawsuit, then I'll send him a check. It's like, well, guess what? Attorneys don't take promises of donations as payment for filing lawsuits. That's not how this works. That's less than useless.
Well, it's like the guy that said, I'll join Goal when you fix all this. Well, at that point, we really don't need your help.
That's right. We'll be fine then.
That's right. So, it's kind of interesting. The lawsuits are lining up. This is not going to happen overnight.
Nope.
Everybody should know that by now. The other thing is interpreting the law. And I kind of joke with some of the attorneys that we go back and forth with, hey, did you see this? What'd you think of this? Ron Glidden's in those conversations. And it's so interesting, when you get, well, Goal's completely wrong, and to pick one out, it's like,
Are we?
Well,
Are we?
They're saying the Moore Healey thing is law. It was never law. Well, it is now, folks. So
Yeah.
some people, not everybody, but some people are interpreting the law the way they want it to be, not the way it actually is. So
yeah, there's a lot of that going on.
But I will say, listen, I'm okay to be wrong. I mean, is my wife around? No. Okay. I'm okay to be wrong at something, but you got to show me precisely how we're wrong. And we're amending what we put out all the time. I heard that Glidden did his first class today in front of 200 people, and John texted me and said, Glidden stole your line because he opened up with, if you ask a question, the answer might be, hell if I know. It's like, come on.
Well, I think the responsibility.
My God.
There's a responsibility from Gun Owners Action League side is to not paint this with rose-colored glasses and say that, well, the law says this, but I talked to a specific law enforcement officer or agency and they said they're not going to enforce. Like the law says X, but they're going to enforce Y, and then they sent me a letter that says something different.
That drives me
you have to plan for the full enforcement to the letter of the law.
Exactly.
If it happens to work out better for certain individuals, great.
That's great,
but you can't go around giving guidance to say, oh yeah, the law says this, but you can do something that's in contravention to the law.
Exactly.
Well, the other thing too is we get some criticism for what people say, hyping it up just to raise money. I don't have to hype anything up to raise money, folks.
Right, just
this is bad on its own.
Read the law.
But the other thing, too, is some people say, well, you're overreacting to specific sections. Listen, our job is to keep you out of prison. So when I read a piece of law like this, I have to try to think about what is the worst possible case scenario. Because the Attorney General is not our friend. Most of the prosecutors and district attorneys or whatever in the state are not our friends.
Right.
Some of them are very aggressive. So how could this possibly be, interpreted or enforced to the worst extent possible? That's our job, is to make sure, because later in life, they're going to say, well, you didn't tell us. It was like, yeah, well, we did, but you just wouldn't listen. And, for the most part, too, I don't blame people. I mean, they are so confused. Number one, about the process that didn't happen, the court process, which they're totally unfamiliar with. And you can't blame them because we haven't taught civics in this country in 50 years.
Yeah.
So why would they know the process?
Why would anybody know how this stuff works?
Said it plenty of times. They stopped teaching civics as soon as the government took over education. They don't want to teach you how the system works.
Kind of funny about that, isn't it?
Yeah.
But so I don't blame people for being confused and frustrated, and if they have to take it out on us, they take it out on us. But they're angry and scared, and I don't blame them for being that way. It's just we have to continue to do our job. And I told a member at the fair today, I says, we kind of have to take the standpoint of almost like a surgeon. We can't get emotionally involved with what's happening. We just have to continue to do our work. We cannot respond to every single member personally, and I wish we could, but we just don't have the bandwidth.
Yeah.
We've got to be able to continue to put our nose down. And, I even get told on social media, well, you're not responding to questions on social media. You think we sit there and monitor every comment on social media after we make a post?
I don't want, as a Goal member, I don't want you sitting on Facebook answering questions all day. You got more important things to do.
Well, unfortunately, the law doesn't
get fight for our rights, for Christ's sake.
The law is not going to be litigated on
social media,
in tweets and tweet threads. But looking at it, kind of holistically, Jim. So it's obvious that the whole emergency preamble was a sham.
Oh, it's complete bullcrap. Yeah.
Because they're saying that they passed a law that they didn't really understand, which should be terrifying to most people just on its own. now they're saying that, well, it's an emergency, but half the stuff we're not going to enforce and everybody's going to do it a little bit differently. The big question then becomes, what is the impetus for the emergency preamble? And I believe Toby Leary from Cape Gunworks just gave a press conference the other day on the State House steps.
Today.
Or was that today?
That was today at noon.
Yeah, that was today. Yeah.
On tomorrow. They've already had more than 50,000 signatures certified, and Toby says there are about 40,000 more on their way to being certified by the towns.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts?
Yep.
Was this emergency preamble just solely a means to take down the petition effort?
Well, it's not going to take down the petition effort. What it is it takes down the suspension of the law until it goes on the ballot.
Right.
So once these signatures are certified by the towns, then they have to go to the Secretary of State to certify them. And once they have enough, it will go on the ballot in 2026. But there's a lot here that we're trying to figure out, and I don't think anybody knows the answer. But her action took away the suspension of the law until it gets on the ballot.
Yeah.
The other thing is, and I got to give huge props to Toby. He's done just such a phenomenal job.
And the coalition, they have like 700 volunteers all across the state. It's amazing.
Yeah, I call it Toby's Brigade. Remember, there was an old World War II movie, Doyle's Brigada. That's Toby's Brigade now. So cool. I mean, just kudos to all those people. Well, remember, when I first did a video address about the original bill, what did I say?
Yep.
Chairman Day, you just woke up an entire group of this society. You've done something that we hadn't been able to do in 50 years. And, F around and find out. Well, they're very slowly starting to find out this ain't going to just stop. It's going to be an entire movement, and it's going to be crazy. The only thing with the ballot question we're not sure of, and there's no reason to not move forward, is if the legislature, because the whole bill had to be in the referendum petition.
Yes.
Word for word. Mike Harris set that all up.
Yep.
If the legislature messes with the language, messes with the structure, what does that do to the referendum question of the bill?
That's a fine question.
So if they make substantial changes to the law in the next 2 years, what does that do? We don't have an answer for that. So the other thing is, we know already that when we start to get close to that 2026 date, that our opposition from around the country is going to throw millions of dollars of media at us.
Oh, they're
going to show videos.
Descend on this state. It's going to be Bloomberg. It's going to be every town. It's going to be pictures of AR-15s in schools and all kinds of stuff.
So we're going to have to actually get ahead of that with a whole different message and try to move forward. But after the collection stuff is done and we get through the fair and a bunch of other things, that's when we'll sit down with Toby and company and develop a strategy and a messaging, because it can't be save my guns. It can't be,
right.
AR, it can't be any of that. It has to resonate with the average person.
Yeah.
Because, they're not going to care about saving your AR if they're not a gun owner. So it'll be worked out. It's going to take some time, but we'll continue to work on it. Nothing is happening overnight. Do not pray for rain, because it ain't coming. It's going to take a sustained effort.
Yep.
And it's going to be a sustained effort on several fronts. You're not going to win this from sitting behind your keyboard. You're going to have to get off your ass, get involved, whether it's raising money for lawsuits, whether it's getting involved in a petition process, or some plans that we have for the future about honest protests, serious protest. We need to make their lives uncomfortable to the people who voted for this garbage. And the 2A community's never done that before.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I went to a rally once and it didn't work. Okay. Did you cut your grass last week? Yeah. Did you cut it again this week? Why?
Yeah.
It grew back.
You already
so
did.
Why did you bother cutting it again? Yeah, no. You got to keep doing it. So it's not a matter of one and done. And I use the rainbow community as an example. Do you think they held one protest 50 years ago and said, oh, crap, it didn't work and went home?
Right.
Nuh-uh. No, it took them decades to get back to where they wanted to be. I shouldn't say back to where they wanted to be, but no, this has to be a sustained effort on many fronts. It's not just one and done. So gear up, rock up, and let's get working. So say all you want online, social media, but the bottom line is we got to charge forward. We have to charge forward in so many different directions. And actually, probably shouldn't say this, but I'm gonna. At this point right now, it doesn't matter exactly how the bill is interpreted. We know it's horrible. It doesn't matter if every single point of view is absolutely 100% correct.
Yeah.
Because that's not going to get you out of prison. Okay.
Right.
Because if they don't know, how the hell is anybody else supposed to know?
Yeah, exactly.
I actually heard rumors at EOPS that, when our summaries first started coming out, the higher ups, were asking, their staff, okay, what does this mean? And they would hand them the goal summaries and go, here's a place to start anyway. Now Ron Glidden's been working hard at rewriting his book and
from the ground up, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, you got law enforcement has no clue what to do. The other thing is the courts. Basically, every established law that had court precedence is gone.
Gone. Yeah, it's all vanished. The courts are going to have to make this up kind of as they go along, too.
Yep.
Case by case.
Yeah. And we'll see what the Donnell case does, because there are state-level cases we're involved in, too.
That's right.
We have a couple of suitability cases, and then we have the Donnell case, which is the non-resident thing, which has a huge impact on the non-resident issues in this bill.
Oh, yeah.
And it will be very interesting to see if the state's high court, the SJC, how they're going to rule on this, because we all talked about not earlier today, but earlier about how they ruled unanimously that switchblades were suddenly covered under the Second Amendment, which
that was surprising.
It almost stopped my heart for the third time. So
because there wasn't a whole huge rally from the switchblade community.
No, it just showed up. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. I thought that maybe the court that day were testing the psychedelic mushrooms that's on the ballot just to see how they would work. And came out with a Pro 2A amendment.
Have one of these brownies.
If it chills them out on gun laws, I'll be happy to. I'll throw some money into the kitty for them.
I'll pitch in.
Yeah. That's kind of long and short of it. With court cases, we should have some good news moving forward.
Good.
But again, this stuff takes time. It's not going to happen right away. Anybody who thinks that you can just walk in and get an emergency injunction,
right?
Likelihood of that happening is pretty rare. So don't get your hopes up. It's not that we're doing anything wrong or even other organizations are doing anything wrong. That's kind of just a myth that you can walk in and get one. So we told everybody, too, that for a year and a half, listen, if this gets into law, we will do what we need to do to fight it, but you're going to have to live with it as it's going through the process.
The best way to prevent a crappy law from being a crappy law is to prevent it from being a law at all, right? Not to fight it after the fact.
So we've been trying to do from the goal side that's what we're here for.
What goal does,
Yep. And we were able to play good defense up until just a few years ago. Post-COVID, the legislature's completely different animal.
Yeah.
They don't want to talk to anybody. So
they don't have to talk to anybody.
Matter of fact,
they don't feel like they have to talk to anybody.
I have people harassing me now to get our endorsement for election. And it's like I could care right now. I could care so less about the state house. It's not even funny.
Right.
Elections are important. Everybody should vote, but I am not going to waste a lot of time out there endorsing new candidates that don't have a track record. So, definitely support the people who voted against this thing and remember everybody who voted for it. And that's really where you got to go. But right now, my focus is not on the state house at all. Matter of fact, I said this many times since they put this thing into law. They kind of set me free now because I don't have to be a nice guy anymore. And I don't have to walk those halls in the state house and try to do what I used to be able to do successfully. Now I can just take the gloves off and have at them. And that's when you're going to see the Scotsman come out in me because I'm going to have some fun with this. But
right on.
So that's kind of where we are, guys.
Well, the call to action, as always, is get the hell away from the keyboard, get up, out, and get involved. You know, we're going to need donations, but we're also going to need engagement.
Yep. Get on the mailing list for your local politician. Find out when they love to post, oh, I'm going to be here at this date and this time. And I can think of a very certain individual who loves to post their public appearances on Instagram. So, yeah, join their mailing list. And when they're going to be somewhere, show up and make your voice heard, because obviously
be a pain in the ass.
They don't want to listen to you inside the State House. So maybe it's time they start having to listen outside the State House.
Right. You have a constitutionally protected right to be a pain in the ass. So go.
Oh, hell, my wife would tell you that.
Well, that's in your DNA, though. That's like deeper than
that's true. I've been, it's one of those things, but I'm Scottish. What are you going to do? But anyway, the other thing, don't forget, we have another little fundraiser, October 26th, is it, Saturday, at the Marlboro Fishing Game. And this is not a sit-down dinner, but we're still asking a $20 donation to get there. And we're going to have some auctions. We're going to have some raffles. And Angie has a friend that's got a Caribbean food truck. So that should be cool.
That's awesome.
If you want food, you can grab something from the food truck.
And that was October the 26th. Is that right?
Whatever that Saturday is.
Saturday, October 26th.
Saturday, October 26th.
At 11 o'clock. So go online, buy tickets, and then, people are still donating items. Some of them are used guns. There's a ton of ammunition. Matter of fact, we had to figure out, can we actually transfer the ammunition at the event? And
you have to keep.
We determined the answer is yes. So, but it wasn't an easy yes. We had to really do some research on that. We know the guns will have to be transferred at the goal office whenever that happens, but that's fine. We have all the licenses to do that. And then if anybody still wants to donate items, it doesn't even have to be gun related. Yeah. One guy donated a leaf blower, and I'm like, yep, we'll take that. Okay. Sure, absolutely. Yep. Right. Thank you.
Gun people get leaves too.
That's right. Well, not only leaves, but if you get light, fluffy snow, you can just blow it off your driveway instead of shoveling it. So there you go.
Right.
Yeah. Of course, I know guys that use flamethrowers, but that's a whole different thing.
Jim Wallace, Executive Director, Gun Owners Action League. Thanks as always.
Let's rock and roll, guys.
Right on. Let's rock and roll.
So there we go. Jim Wallace, Executive Director of Gun Owners Action League. Always good to hear from the source.
Yeah, right from the horse's mouth, or the horse's no. No, it's great to have Jim on. Unfortunately, these days it seems like it's always under adverse circumstances that we got to have the guy on here.
Well, it's under adverse circumstances that goal has to exist.
Yeah, you're right there.
But it's wild to see that the coalition, the work that all the folks that we know have raised.
Amazing.
I mean, close to 100,000 signatures in
That's big.
4 weeks.
That might be, and Toby said something like this in his press statement. And I believe that this to be true. This is like the biggest grassroots effort that I think we've seen in like living memory. This is huge.
Very huge. Which begs the question. So
seriously, kudos to those people.
We talked about the emergency preamble and what it means, and it makes me wonder if this isn't now becoming a First Amendment issue on top of a Second Amendment issue.
Absolutely, it is.
Because in the grand national conversation about censorship and free speech and who's allowed to say what, it's becoming, I think, readily apparent that the only emergency that existed is that the people were speaking and they weren't very pleased with the governor's decision making.
Yeah.
And I want to that's the real emergency.
Right.
Is that as someone is looking at advancing their career, they don't want any negative feedback on their resume.
How can she, obviously she can do it because she's a politician and full of crap most of the time, but how do you with a straight face say, no, the petition had nothing to do with it. It was total coincidence that, I signed an emergency preamble right when they were announcing that they had enough signatures to put a stop to it.
And I'm willing to bet.
Does anybody actually believe that that's true? I mean, come on.
I would be shocked if there wasn't communication between Beacon Hill and all the different towns and the counties to see, hey, how's this actually going?
Yeah, we got a bunch of signatures. Yeah,
2 weeks prior when it was questionable of how many signatures are we going to get, how much support is the petition going to get.
Yeah.
There was no emergency preamble then.
No, of course not. Of course not. The only reason there's a preamble at all is because we were getting ready to shut this thing down.
It's to silence the will of the people.
Exactly.
To silence the voters.
Yep. All right. Well, so that's not the only thing going on.
How's that for protecting democracy?
Yeah, right. All right. That's not the only thing going on. Have you seen this? Sudbury's back. Sudbury is once again trying to zone out firearms out of town. Basically, it's the same thing that they tried before that got shot down. You know, as usual with the anti-gun whack-a-mole. You know, you knock down the effort, they come right back.
It's the modern lawfare.
Yeah.
Lawfare against firearms owners.
Yeah, exactly. You just keep going. So anyway, Sudbury, if you live in Sudbury, get involved. There's a public hearing coming up on Monday, October the 21st, 2024 at 7 p.m. It's a hybrid meeting. You go to sudbury.ma.us. And it's under the Board of Appeals section. You're looking for Monday, October the 21st, 2024, 7 o'clock. It's a hybrid meeting, so there is a Zoom link where you can join in, but it's the so-called firearm zoning bylaw public input section, or session rather. So naturally it's like, we're just looking for public input, but what they really want to do is zone firearms. They want to zone gun stores out of the town.
So essentially they want to have a one-stop listening tour.
Yeah.
About the...
pretty much.
Makes you wonder if they ever thought, if the powers that be thought that far down the road of... Let's do this. Let's just try to crush their spirit enough so that they stop trying to have input.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yikes. All right. So there's that's Sudbury on the national level. Today, just actually this morning, as we record this on October 8th, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments in Garland v. Vanderstock. This is the ATF. This is a challenge to the ATF frame and receivers rule that we actually covered it here. Well, we didn't really dive into the lawsuit, but we certainly talked about the rule quite a bit. So that was accepted, granted cert last session, and they heard oral arguments this morning. I listened. I wasn't able to listen today, so I'm waiting. Yeah, to hear your analysis. I was not particularly thrilled with what I heard. I don't think that the lawyer for Vanderstock, for our side, actually did us any favors. And in general, I based purely on the responses from the justices at the oral argument, I don't know whether they're going to come down on the side of this. They did not seem sympathetic to the argument, against the ATF's rule, and it becomes a.
Well, what was the core? Let's rewind a little bit. What was the core point that
it was
the attorneys were trying to make?
Self-build kits, ready-made kits, right? P80s.
Who's now out of business, by the way.
Yeah, right, exactly. They had to shut down because of all his crap. But it's basically, it was focused on build kits. And so the question, as it always is with this stuff, is what constitutes a frame or receiver, right? How is the ATF looking at it? Is this what makes a block of raw material a frame or receiver? Is it the first cut or is it the last cut? And that's the important distinction, and there was a lot of analogies being thrown around by does eggs and vegetables, constitute an omelet if they're still separate? Or there was a fair amount of back and forth. I did not, like I said, I didn't get the overall impression that the justices were particularly sympathetic to overruling the ATF on this matter. I hope that I'm wrong, but that was my impression from the oral arguments.
Well, we'll have to wait and see what the decision comes out to be. They've certainly, in the last year, 2 years, have leaned a little bit more favorably to the Second Amendment community towards, constitutional rights, not even just looking at a community, but saying, hey, this is what the Constitution says. Right. And why don't we just go with that instead of making stuff up as we go? Yeah. It'll also be interesting to see what they decide with accepting the ATF's position, given the more recent decisions about Chevron deference and how much are agencies allowed to create their own regulation.
So the applicant, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a constitutionalist. I'm none of those things. I don't, I have to point out my non-credentials here, but I don't know how much application the concept of Chevron deference has when it comes to criminal cases. So I guess that's one of the questions that's going to have to be answered. I don't want to, overspeak my what little bit I know about this stuff. I don't know. I guess we'll see by the end of the session. They're either going to rule right away or they'll wait until June like they usually do.
Well, it'll certainly be impactful for this, not just for federally, but especially for the state of Massachusetts and understanding, well, what is the definition of a frame and receiver?
Oh, sure. We've got a giant bill that, partially, not even like the major part of it, but partially deals with unfinished frames and receivers. So
registrations, what constitutes a firearm. Exactly. Not to say that Massachusetts hasn't very much enjoyed going well above and beyond federal guidelines.
Yeah.
But coming back to Massachusetts,
a restriction they didn't like. Yeah,
of course not. But coming back to Massachusetts, the First Circuit panel heard oral arguments in Capon v. Campbell.
That they did, and that was the challenge to the assault weapons ban.
One of the challenges that are this one's been actually hanging around for a while, wending its way up. I did not get a chance to listen to the oral arguments on that one. This is the National Association for Gun Rights.
Right. It's that one that they came in, filed, and then,
I watched a little bit of it. Toby actually live streamed it.
Did he?
So I was able to catch bits and pieces of it last night. Post hunting and trying to have dinner and everything else. So I was kind of half in, half out on it. It was interesting to watch as the attorney for Capon's side. It seemed that the argument that he was making was, listen, this has been decided. It's been decided by Heller. It's been decided by McDonald. It's been decided by Bruin. It's been decided by Rahimi. It's been decided on all of these cases that firearms in common use are covered under the Second Amendment. Full stop.
Yeah.
You don't need to justify it. You don't need to come up with a reason or rationale.
Common use, period. Not common use.
That's the end of it.
Yeah, right.
These are arms for self-defense. And the one justice kept asking, it's like, well, have you submitted any documentation about how often, particularly AR-15s, but how often was an AR-15 used in self-defense? And he's like, that's not the point.
That's irrelevant. Yeah.
It's irrelevant. Yeah. It's, you're obviously trying to be respectful to the judge to go, your question is stupid. But the judge just kept coming back. And it's like, well, if they're, you're arguing for them to be protected as in common use for self-defense, how many times are they actually used in self-defense?
That doesn't matter.
Like, well, she kept pushing for like, give me a number.
Yeah.
And the guy had cited, he's, it's like 20-something million of these rifles. It's the most popular rifle in America.
Yeah.
And he goes, if you assume that if you look, it's like the total number of people killed by rifles, if they were all killed by 8 people with an AR-15 patterned rifle, that makes up 0.0002% of that firearm that's available on the commercial market.
So those are not, that by definition cannot meet the definition of
judges kept coming back and say, but how many times do they, it's like, do you want to?
Well, so it's obvious where they wanted to come down on it, right? They have
I think certainly for her.
They have an outcome and they want to get there.
But no, there were good questions that were going back and forth, but we'll have to see how it goes. I'm not terribly hopeful, but I'm not terribly unhopeful.
Yeah, so this was a First Circuit panel. We don't have the Second Amendment does not have a great history with the First Circuit. So depending on how that goes, then obviously it'll be appealed up to the Supreme Court. We'll see from there.
We shall see. But it'll be,
we are.
But hey, the First Circuit or the state Supreme Court, however they ruled on switchblades, we'll see what they do with this.
We will see.
But again, it's the ongoing argument of the assault weapons ban, what firearms can be regulated. That's all, there are multiple cases that are going to the Supreme Court or at least file a petition for certiorari.
Yeah.
So we will have to see which one makes it to the Supreme Court first and then what the decision of that will become.
All right. There it is. You heard it here first. But no, you can check out Toby's show, Rapid Fire Radio, and I'm sure the oral arguments are also available on the actual website for the First Circuit too. I'm pretty sure they publish that stuff. So stay tuned. Obviously, we're going to have more to say on Chapter 135 and related stuff as it comes along. But for now, that's actually going to do it for today. Thank you for listening in. Be sure to subscribe to the Goal Podcast and check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/GoalPodcastMA or on YouTube at The Goal Podcast or on Twitter at Goal Update.
To join Goal, visit goal.org and click the Join Renew button on the top of the homepage.
If you have a topic you think we should cover, if there's something going on in your club or your town, or if you have a question for the mailbag, shoot us an email at goalpodcast@goal.org.
The Goal Podcast is a production of Gun Owners Action League of Massachusetts. The views and opinions expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of Goal, its staff, or affiliates.